Oh man, I'm not looking forward to the comment section of this one. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. It was one of my most formative pieces of media. I've been with the show since it was airing on Nickelodeon. I've rewatched it countless times, and every time I create a story, it's Avatar that I look to as my gold standard that I want to achieve. Avatar was coming out when I was transitioning between middle school and high school, so the characters were all around my age while I was watching, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I tell you that I was obsessed with this show. I was in the fandom, drew fan art constantly, and even wrote fanfic, followed all the latest news, got all of my friends into the show, and even hosted an Avatar marathon party where all my friends and I watched season 1 and 2 together dressed up as Avatar characters. Huge thanks to my mom, by the way, for making all those costumes. And even after all this time, I still think about Avatar all the time and just how awesome it is. But for everything good about Avatar, the fantastic storytelling, the fight choreography, the voice acting, the art, the character development, it's not a perfect show, which I realize that saying that might already be getting some people feeling hot and bothered, because I know I've seen a fair share of people claim that it is, in fact, a perfect show. But don't worry, I'm not here to try to ruin Avatar for anyone. None of the criticisms I'm going to be talking about here are things that I think are like deep, unforgivable narrative flaws or anything like that. I just like to look at media that I love critically. And even if you go away from this video disagreeing with me, I get it. Trust me, I've been around a lot of Avatar discourse over the years, so I've heard so many different takes on this particular aspect of the show. Don't worry, I've heard it all. Either way, you've seen the title of the video, so let's get into it. Let's talk about Aang. First and foremost, I want to talk about my own personal feelings about Aang. I think that's a good place to start. Because as someone who's gone on record for shipping Zuko and Katara, and from the title of the video, you might assume that I hate Aang, and I don't. He is, however, easily my least favorite member of Team Avatar, excluding, like Appa and Momo. And Aang's low ranking on Team Avatar doesn't have so much to do with him, although he certainly has his issues we'll get into. It's just the fact that I like the other characters more. Toph, Sokka, Katara, Zuko. These characters are all phenomenal. Suki too. Suki rocks, and I really wish that she had more screen time, but what can you do? And Aang can be great too. He's a genuine character with a big heart who's burdened with a huge amount of responsibility at the turning point in his childhood. He's funny, kind, and smart. His quick wit would be one of his shining qualities, but honestly, most everyone in Avatar is quick-witted, and it's one of those things that makes the show so fun to watch. However, that's what I mean when I say I like all the other characters more, because for every good trait that Aang has, it can kind of be outshone by any of our other main cast. Aang kind of lags behind in character development when you compare him to everyone else. And that's too bad, because I think the show sets up some really clear room for Aang to grow, but then never ends up following through on it. And as a result, Aang is a flatter character than most of the main cast. Especially compared to Zuko. And you might think that comparing Aang to Zuko is unfair, considering Zuko is easily the most developed character from the show, and in general has a lot more room to grow from the beginning, but the show set these two up as narrative foils since the beginning, so I think it's only fair to compare and contrast the two. I also do want to give Aang credit where it's due. He's oftentimes the character to help our other characters have fun and get to act like kids again. And after the emotional baggage of the 100-Year War, that's important. But on the flip side of that, Aang is often the mediator to conflicts, and sometimes he's really good at this, and then other times they just kind of ignore this part of his characterization. leaving Aang feeling just kind of childish and inconsistent a lot of time between episode to episode. But before we get into all of that, I want to give examples of the other characters before we delve into Aang, because I do think it'll really highlight what I'm talking about. So starting with Katara, the motherly caretaker of the group, or at least that's her role at first glance. Katara starts the show wanting to learn waterbending, but as the last waterbender of the South Pole, she has no one to learn from. She takes care of her brother Sokka, but is hot-headed and adventurous, and idealistic almost to a fault. Over the course of Season 1, Katara is able to help other people suffering from the war and truly begin asserting herself as a waterbending warrior and inspiration to all who meet her. Her progress with waterbending is a slow start, and even a bit of a touchy subject to her pride when Aang begins picking up waterbending faster than her, but by the end of Season 1, Katara has not only proven herself capable, but a master waterbender good enough to continue Aang's teaching. Katara is a character who doesn't have a ton of personal character growth, but instead is a character who is stuck not being able to meet her full potential because she lacks the resources to empower her. And her journey is about learning about herself and learning more about the world around her. She's not only the glue holding the team together and there for everybody in their darkest moments, but she's fought for her own independence and worked hard to earn her skills. In Season 2, Katara is the rock of Team Avatar. No offense to Toph. After Appa is captured, Katara keeps the team together in the desert, despite everything. Though she isn't without her faults. In particular, Katara clashes with Team Avatar's newest team member, Toph, on both a personal level like in the chase, and on a difference in teaching techniques like in bitter work. Neither of these situations is directly addressed, but Katara and Toph both grow in their dynamic with each other from open hostility to an understanding of each other and their differences. Katara also has a lot set up in the next part of her character development in the form of Jet's return. Throughout Season 1 and Season 2, we see Katara's dynamic with the other members of the team grow and change. However, for as loving and compassionate as Katara is, you do not betray her trust. Katara has a hard time believing and trusting in Jet when he shows up again, and this is a perfect setup for what is about to happen with Zuko in the season finale and going forward. Katara is angry at Jet's return and unwilling to forgive Jet until it's basically too late. Then, when Katara and Zuko find common ground in the catacombs, you can argue that this experience with Jet is part of the reason Katara can find it in herself to give Zuko a chance. Plus, the fact that Zuko and Katara also connect through finding out that they have very similar shared trauma from this war, something that Jet and Katara bonded over when they first met as well. Then in Season 3, we get some of the most raw Katara development. The walls of her composed motherly barrier are starting to come apart. We learn about her abandonment issues through her conversation with her father, her mother's death, her father leaving, Jet's betrayal, Zuko's betrayal, Aang's near death. Katara fears everyone leaving her or betraying her trust, and she takes it out on her father at the beginning of the season. Katara learns of another Southern Water Tribe waterbender, Hama, and similarly gets betrayed again. And now we're dealing with some new trauma that Hama introduced. On top of all that, we get a nice conclusion to the Toph and Katara dynamic in The Runaway. And we directly confront Katara's motherly nature. And Katara gets another episode to show her fierce determination to aid those in need in The Painted Lady. So with all those factors in play, Katara's trauma, abandonment, and just anger and betrayal at all these wrongs the war has brought on to her, it's completely understandable why Katara has the response she does to Zuko joining the group. But then, in what's probably the climax for Katara's character, Katara gets to seek restitution for her mother's death and work out her feelings of betrayal and abandonment in the Southern Raiders. Katara learns what forgiveness means for herself and who deserves it or not. Again, as a character who started this series as someone who just needed the means to reach her full potential, I think this is a very fitting end for her character arc. Katara has not only been given the means to empower herself, but also the means to seek justice for the wrongs inflicted on her, and she's the one who gets to decide how to use that power. It's a great cap to her character. Moving on to Sokka. Sokka starts the show as your typical funny man. He's honestly a bit insufferable in the first few episodes, I'm not gonna lie. His first main character flaw is misogyny, so, that gets old really quick. But luckily, by episode 4, we kind of nip that in the butt. But Sokka has a lot of other good qualities, thankfully. Easily, he's one of the funniest characters until Toph comes along, and he's a very science and logic-minded character in a magical world, giving him a bit of an inferiority complex to his bending counterparts and making him a bit of a misfit in the fighting department. But that's contrasted nicely by the fact that Sokka is a warrior through and through. He's a true leader of the group, and he learns how to outwit benders and knows when is the best time to run and when is the best time to fight. And he's going to use his brain to make sure that if his side is fighting, he's going to come up with a plan to give them the best shot at winning. Season 1 Sokka is what I'm going to call an unwilling lost boy. He's on the cusp of adulthood and becoming a man, but he's been left behind by all the men in his village. Meaning Sokka is simultaneously given the role of leading male patriarch in his village, while he's also just a teen stuck being a child. Because he has no male figures to look up to or guide him or give him the kind of male bonding experiences that the Southern Water Tribe would traditionally do for young men in their village. And a lot of Sokka's experiences in Season 1 are directly or indirectly about this conflict. Whether it's Sokka feeling inferior to the Kyoshi warriors, or Jet's gang, or other male figures, or episodes like Bato of the Water Tribe, where Sokka finally gets to experience some of those rites of passages he missed out on. Sokka goes through some much needed humbling and validation in Season 1. And of course, Sokka's tragic relationship with Yue is going to leave a lasting impact on Sokka moving forward, making Sokka a bit more grounded and stoic. He's still a silly character, but he's also the straight man of the group. I love these two contrasting sides of his personality. Sokka's connection to his masculinity is also more positive and fun after Season 1, and Sokka really gets to take the lead in planning an offense against the Fire Nation in the war. While the main narrative is centered around Aang learning the elements, that would mean nothing without Sokka's planning. And Sokka really gets to shine in some Season 3 episodes as well. Obviously, Sokka's Master is a whole Sokka-centric episode, showcasing Sokka's growth and letting him get the chance to train with a master for once. His confession to Toph and how he sees Katara as his mother is a really interesting insight into Sokka and Katara's relationship. And his arc really gets to climax during the Day of Black Sun and Boiling Rock. He gets to lead the troops into battle with a plan of his design, but doesn't feel confident in his leadership. The plan goes belly up, and Sokka has to take more responsibility and control of the situation, and even when everything goes to crap, he gets to redeem himself in the Boiling Rock by saving Hakoda and Suki. Next up we have Toph, and Toph starts off super strong in the character development. Season 2 introduces Toph, and she gets so much development in her intro season. Her conflict with her parents is messy, and it's a very relatable story about adults underestimating her abilities. And when she joins Team Avatar, Toph gains the independence she's always wanted, but she doesn't know how to be part of a team, which leads to her conflict with Katara. We get a lot of moments of badassery and vulnerability with Toph in this season. She feels partly responsible for Appa getting kidnapped, she gets to bond with Katara about exploring her femininity, and she also has a running side plot about her parents' goons trying to kidnap her and bring her home, through which is how she discovers metal bending. But unfortunately, this is where I have to admit that Avatar really dropped the ball, because Toph's character development is basically over at this point. She does get one more episode centered on her in The Runaway. that further develops Toph's complicated feelings towards her parents and reconciles with Toph's independence versus Katara's need for family. This episode is great setup to explore more of Toph and how she'll need to grow and mature and figure out what her independence means for her while also being able to accept the love and community of her found family, while also maybe trying to mend the bridge with her birth family. But no, we don't get that, unfortunately. Toph's story is just kinda over now. She is also the first person to give Zuko a chance in the Western Air Temple, which I'll admit is a nice follow-up from her meeting Uncle Iroh back in the chase. She just doesn't have as much beef with Zuko. But sadly, this isn't really character development on Toph's part, and Toph isn't going to be able to go on a life-changing Zuko field trip. So I bring all these characters up because Toph's abandoned character development is a preview of what's to come for Aang too, I regret to say, which is why I felt it was important to go over all of the main Team Avatar kids. Katara, Sokka, and Zuko get the most closure to their arcs, while poor Toph and Aang really lose sight of things during Season 3. Oh, right. We haven't talked about Zuko yet. Well, Zuko is the best. I mean, what do you want me to say? He's one of the best written characters of all time. So, this is where I have to pull back the curtain a bit on this video. I was initially working on a Zuko video, and after writing for a while, I came to the realization that in order to really talk about why I love Zuko's character arc so much, I just had to talk about Aang and get my feelings about Aang off my chest. Because there's so much to say about Zuko's character arc that I feel is directly connected to how I feel that they did Aang dirty in this show. And I hope this video will make that clear. So I won't be going into a deep dive on Zuko in this video in particular, but I do want to talk about how Zuko's arc develops alongside Aang's. Zuko and Aang start the show as narrative foils to each other. Zuko's bad actions make Aang look all the more heroic and wise. A hot-headed teen who uses violence and shouting to get his way is squarely beaten by a boy who uses kindness and understanding to help those around him. But early on in the series, the writers had already decided to make Zuko a sympathetic villain with more going on under the surface than you might think at first glance. In order to do this, they quickly establish Zuko's antagonistic relationship with his own nation and people. Zuko's rivalry with Zhao is another foil. While Zuko might look evil compared to Aang, Zuko is sympathetic compared to Zhao, the real antagonist the gang needs to worry about early on. And then, of course, even when Zhao is defeated, the greater Fire Nation as a whole and Fire Lord Ozai are the real antagonists. For a villain character, Zuko gets nearly as much screen time as our core cast of good guys. And most of the time, Zuko's not even interacting with them. In Season 1, Zuko only crosses paths with Team Avatar in 9 episodes, but appears as a B-plot in at least 14 of the 20 episodes. And then in Season 2, Zuko and Iroh only encounter Team Avatar twice. Once in the chase, and then at the finale. And Season 2 is just as much about Zuko and Iroh's journey as it is about Aang learning earthbending. So as Zuko becomes less and less of a foil to Aang, he starts to become more of a parallel to Aang. The first episode to really showcase this is The Storm. And The Storm is easily one of my favorite episodes of the whole series. It's where we learn about Zuko and Aang's respective backstories. In their backstories, Zuko and Aang are closer to the same age, and we can see the differences between them in sharp contrast. Zuko, at 13, wanted to be treated more like an adult. He begs his uncle to let him join the War Council meeting with the other generals, even thinking that as Crown Prince to the Fire Nation, it's his responsibility to do so. In contrast, Aang is clinging to his childhood and wanting to avoid the responsibility that comes with being the Avatar. Neither of these attitudes towards their responsibilities is more correct, obviously, but for Zuko, he is so single-mindedly focused on his responsibilities and gaining his abusive father's approval, it leads to his burning and banishment. And for Aang, his avoidance in taking on responsibility leads him to running away and the air nomads being killed. This is the first introduction of both Zuko and Aang's personal traumas and what will ultimately be their wants versus their needs going on through the series. Also, small side note, please note that I am not blaming either of these characters for the bad things that happened here in their backstories. I'm saying that this is a catalyst for their backstories in explaining why the stakes are so high for both characters and foreshadowing how both characters need to learn and grow from these experiences. They both have a mountain of regret and trauma and loss and feel personally responsible for what happened due to their actions. Zuko's journey is about reconciling who he needs to be to find his own inner happiness and peace for the sake of the world versus who his father wants him to be. And Aang's journey is about reconciling who he wants to be versus who he needs to be to find inner peace and save the world. And their stories mirror each other as the series continues. Zuko and Aang both reach one of their lowest points after the season 2 finale. Both boys come so close to realizing their potential, taking the final steps to growing, but then are too frightened to accept this part of themselves that they swing back wildly the other way. While Zuko has technically triumphed and gained all the things he thought he wanted, his crown and his father's approval, he is furthest away from fulfilling his needs and has succumbed to his wants as a character. And on the same note, Aang was well on his way to reaching an inner peace with the Guru and becoming the Avatar he should be, but in the end has completely failed in his growth to become the Avatar the world needs, and even considered dead to the world, and is farthest away from reaching that goal. Aang's blocked chakras is also Aang giving in to his wants versus his needs as a character. So Zuko's arc during Season 3 is realizing his mistakes and then doing everything in his power to change and set things right, at huge personal risk to himself. Zuko leaves to join the Avatar, knowing that he is leaving everything he worked so hard to gain back behind. And the odds of Team Avatar even accepting him into the group are low, and their chances of defeating the Fire Lord are slim, but he does it because he realizes this is who he should have been all along, and he can't keep living a lie, or stand for this injustice and devastation on the world. Aang, on the other hand, well, he goes to Fire Nation school where he gets to act like a normal kid. That's an Aang-centric episode. So once again, he gets to kind of give in to his wants versus his needs. He does learn about propaganda, so that's kind of cool. He learns about Avatar Roku's past with Fire Lord Sozin, which serves as foreshadowing to Zuko joining the group, but it doesn't really have much to do with Aang's character growth. Okay, he has another episode. He freaks out about the Black Sun invasion in Nightmares and Daydreams. Yeah, no, there's not really any character development in the Black Sun 2-parter. Okay, we're in the second half of Season 3. He's avoidant of his Avatar responsibilities again in the Western Air Temple.
I wonder if there are any secret rooms. Let's go check it out.
You guys go. I think we need to talk about some things.
Why can't I go?
We need to decide what we're gonna do now. And since you're the Avatar, maybe you should be a part of this.
Fair enough. Oh, yeah, that's great. No problem. I'll just do that.
Aang, no one said it's gonna be easy.
Well, it's not even gonna be possible. Oh well, guess we can't come up with anybody. Why don't we just take a nice tour around the temple?
Thank you all for being so brave and so strong. I'm gonna make this up to you.
He learns the origins of firebending with Zuko. That's cool. Then he's a real self-righteous prick in the Southern Raiders, and an absolute mess in Ember Island Players, where his insecurities are probably the worst they've ever been. And, yeah, you just kind of have to stop here and ask yourself, wait, how is Aang a more put-together and well-developed character at the beginning of this series versus now? How in the world are they going to wrap up his character development in the finale? And that's because Season 3 drops Aang's parallel arc with Zuko. Aang blocking his chakras is briefly mentioned from time to time, but if this was still following the Aang and Zuko parallels, Aang would be realizing what a mistake he made in the Season 2 finale. And before anyone comments, I still think that this could have even worked with Katara and Aang still being endgame. Maybe during the first half of Season 3, Katara and Aang start dating. Aang is getting the thing he always wanted, but their relationship isn't as perfect as he thought it would be. Aang has blocked all his chakras, and all the things he's still tormenting over, his grief, his shame, his regret, is getting in the way of his and Katara's relationship with each other. And Aang hasn't told Katara about how she's the reason he can't control or even go into the Avatar state anymore. But when or if she finds out, Aang knows that the whole group is going to flip out. The gang can tell something's up with Aang, and they even ask Katara about it, but she says that Aang won't talk about it. And what I think would be most important in this version of events is for Aang to realize that he's messed up, and then to make steps to fix things. Not for the gang to somehow find out, get upset with Aang, and then Aang says he's sorry and makes steps to be better. Aang should have the opportunity to grow and take responsibility the same way Zuko does. And then once Aang has done this, maybe his relationship with Katara becomes better, or they get back together, or, they don't. Sorry, I still don't like this pairing, but, I'm trying to be fair and not just let my shipping bias show. Anyway, we really don't get a narrative arc for Aang during Season 3, except for his desire to be in a relationship with Katara, and then the finale introduces a whole new conflict that had nothing to do with Aang's previous character arc, and suddenly he has a character arc about following his principles versus bending them for the sake of world peace. And I want to repeat that Aang's issue with killing the Fire Lord was never a plot point before the finale. The established character development set up for Aang was treated as an inconvenience compared to this new dilemma that had been previously unexplored. And it contradicts what Aang needs to be learning. Aang is still clinging to his wants as a character versus his needs, and when he encounters something that doesn't fit exactly with how he wants it to be, he shuts down and runs away from it.
I knew I shouldn't have asked Kyoshi.
The very thing that was established to be Aang's major character flaws since the beginning. While Zuko sacrifices and becomes a fully realized character, Aang never gets to learn or grow to be better. In Season 1 and 2, I'd argue that Aang makes decent growth. He stumbles at times, but, he's a main character in a kid's show. He kind of has to wrap things up episode by episode in his whole learning department. But, he's slowly learning what it means to be the Avatar. But after his fall from grace, Season 3 Aang just never recovers, and arguably just gets worse and worse. Some of his worst personality traits get amplified but never examined, and worst of all, Aang gets handed a solution specifically so he doesn't have to grow as a character, and the show paints this as a good thing. As though Aang was truly a pure of heart all along, and this was the only natural conclusion. And I know people argue in favor of this all the time, but I just don't really see it as anything other than kneecapping Aang's character development in an obvious way. Especially since the writers did such a beautiful job in paralleling Zuko and Aang's growth up to this point. Every step of the way, Aang reluctantly takes his position as the Avatar, never truly letting go of his wants versus his needs, and never willing to accept the personal sacrifices for the greater good, as Zuko has done. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that Aang just killing Ozai is the solution here. It's much more complex than that. Again, I'll reiterate that before Zuko asks Aang about it in the Southern Raiders, Aang's reluctance to take a life was never brought up. And I know it's almost a meme at this point, but if Aang is so hung up on taking a life due to Air Temple philosophy, then how do you explain all of this?
You muzzled Appa?
I'm sorry. I didn't know it was.
I hurt all of those people. Firebenders? They were here?
The season finale, Will Aang Kill Ozai dilemma, feels like a problem that was written into the finale in order to excuse Aang's lack of character development, not explore it. And I've just seen so many people go through mental gymnastics in order to excuse this part of the show that feels so obviously wrong that it's one of the first things people point to as a flaw. And I think it's time we stop calling a sour grape an apple. And while we're on the topic of the easy solution given to Aang, let's talk about
Winter, spring, summer and fall. Winter, spring, summer and fall. 4 seasons, 4 loves.
So, through most of Avatar The Last Airbender, Aang's goal is to master all 4 elements and the Avatar state so that he can fight the Fire Lord and bring balance back to the world. And for the most part, learning the 4 elements is the part of the show that gets the most screen time. Whether it be Aang training, or learning about the origins of said bending and the people who use it, the techniques and philosophies behind each bending principle, etc. This is the constant, continuous plot throughout most of the series, interwoven with everything else going on. It's even what every book is named after. Mastering the elements is the first task given to Aang by Avatar Roku, and it's what Aang spends most of his time doing. But then, during the season finale, Aang's mastery or non-mastery of the elements is inconsequential. The characters even say that Aang is nowhere near mastering the other elements.
After?
I'm not ready. I need more time to master firebending.
And frankly, your earthbending could still use some work too.
Which is realistic. I mean, I'll give you that. Aang's only been training in these elements for a few months, so sure, it makes sense he wouldn't be a master yet. But the problem is that the whole show has been built around mastering the elements being a key part of Aang's ability to defeat the Fire Lord. So, if he hasn't done that, what is Aang going to do? Why, learn energy bending, of course. A technique of taking someone's bending away that has never been brought up or mentioned since before this point. A solution to Aang's moral dilemma that doesn't seem to have any downsides or negative consequences. And wouldn't you know it, Aang doesn't need to learn anything to use it or reach any kind of new spiritual understanding of himself or the world. It just works! Man, sure makes all those episodes where Aang was struggling to learn earthbending feel pointless. Actually, why did Aang need to learn the other elements at all? After all, his airbending is fantastic, and sure, the other elements added to his moveset, but really, did Aang need to learn the other elements when he's got airbending and energy bending?
Fire is the element of power. The people of the Fire Nation have desire and will, and the energy and drive to achieve what they want. Earth is the element of substance. The people of the Earth Kingdom are diverse and strong. They are persistent and enduring. Air is the element of freedom. The air nomads detached themselves from worldly concerns. Water is the element of change. The people of the Water Tribe are capable of adapting to many things.
Why are you telling me these things?
It is important to draw wisdom from many different places. If we take it from only one place, it becomes rigid and stale. Understanding others, the other elements, and the other nations will help you become whole.
The point of learning and mastering the elements isn't just to add to an avatar's moveset. It's a spiritual and physical journey about learning different cultures and different people. A fully realized avatar doesn't just belong to their birth nation anymore. They've gained the wisdom and experience to realize the validity of every culture and come to the understanding that we are all one people, and to only take wisdom from one place is to close yourself off to the world.
I get how the tree is one big thing, but the whole world?
Sure. You think you're any different from me, or your friends, or this tree? We are all living together, even if most folks don't act like it. We all have the same roots, and we are all branches of the same tree.
The greatest illusion of this world is the illusion of separation.
Like the four nations.
Yes, we are all one people, but we live as if divided.
We're all connected. Everything is connected.
Aang's tendency to run away from conflict can be directly connected to his air temple philosophies. A lot of airbending and monk teachings have to do with avoidance and problem solving in a peaceful way. And Aang takes the teachings very seriously, living by them and sharing the wisdom he's learned from it to others. This is good because as the last of his people, Aang sharing his culture and its teachings to people is part of the balance that was lost to the world when the Fire Nation killed all of the air nomads. However, as the Avatar, and also as a character, it's Aang's responsibility to not only look to the air nomad philosophy for guidance, but to learn and grow from each culture he experiences. One of Aang's biggest struggles with bending was learning earthbending, because earthbending's head-on techniques directly conflict with airbending avoidance. Aang's journey with the elements should have reflected this growth as a character. The element of water is connected to change, and it's really a missed opportunity to never have Aang struggle with learning this element, especially when there's some really great opportunities to explore this during Season 1. Aang's whole world has been turned upside down in Season 1. 100 years have passed, so there's so many chances to talk about how things have changed and how Aang could be struggling with that, and how that relates back to Water Tribe's philosophy of change and community. The world might be different now, but just as water flows and changes form and shape, the Water Tribe changes with it and can get through anything as long as they have each other. A great time to explore this would have been in the episode The Northern Air Temple, where Aang sees how Teo and his dad have altered the temple into a safe haven for their people. A change that is extremely upsetting to Aang, and for good reason. He feels like his people and his culture are being erased and disrespected. But coming to terms with this and learning from this could have been a great time to explore Aang's connection to learning waterbending. rather than him just being naturally good at it at the first try for comedy reasons. Aang would have made a breakthrough in this episode, and it would have given him more agency in learning waterbending when they reached the Northern Water Tribe. Maybe Aang could have even intermediated between Master Pakku and Katara a bit, telling Pakku about how he felt threatened about losing his culture and traditions when he saw Teo's village at the Northern Air Temple. But because of learning about the ways of the Water Tribe, Aang realizes that not all change is bad, and the security Teo's dad gave their community was more important. Firebending is an element that Aang struggled with early on in the show. Not with the element itself, but with its application. Zhang Zhang and Aang as a mentor-student did not see eye to eye, and Aang wasn't mature enough to realize Zhang Zhang's wisdom in the dangers of firebending until it was too late. Because of this, Aang has difficulties using firebending because of the shame and guilt he feels around it. Except...
I'm never gonna firebend again. I can't.
You will never find balance if you deny this part of your life. You are the Avatar, and therefore, you are a firebender.
Aang had to accept this part of himself. Man, rewatching the Guru episode really puts into perspective how far Aang's character development backtracked after season 2. Anyway, let's just say that while Aang might have accepted that he's a firebender, actually learning firebending presented another roadblock. Or maybe locking his crown chakra relocked many of the other chakras as well. It's hard to say since this never gets resolved. But Aang and Zuko learn of the origin of firebending, not as a destructive, rage-fueled source, but as an element of light, warmth, and light, inner passion and drive. It gives both characters a new perspective on their firebending and how to use it. But again, in the show itself, this doesn't really change Aang in any meaningful way, or make him value any certain aspects of Fire Nation culture more. The closure this gives Aang is surface deep, because with Aang, it's only ever about the bending himself. He now feels comfortable doing firebending, but not really the philosophy or the culture behind it. Which is pretty ironic considering that Aang is easily the most spiritual character of the show, and this is kind of the whole point. There are times when Aang is so close. He gets it just long enough to solve this week's dilemma, but by the end of the episode, this lesson has been lost, and Aang is back to his same old, same old. It truly is a shame that Aang never got to spend more time with Uncle Iroh, because I think Iroh could have been a good influence for Aang in this regard. Unlearning not just the elements, but the different cultures and philosophies of each nation should have been key in defeating Ozai. Since Aang is such a spiritual character, I think the finale could have played to Aang's strengths more. Maybe by gaining a deep wisdom of each nation, Aang unlocks the ability to energy bend. Maybe Aang defeats Ozai by transporting themselves to the spirit world, where the spirits put Aang and Ozai through tests, and our hero wins because he's found the inner peace and wisdom to solve the spirits' riddles, whereas Ozai only takes a might makes right and Fire Nation approach to things. In general, there are many ways the writers could have given both Aang a satisfying character arc and solved the dilemma of not wanting to show a 12-year-old murder someone. But, like Toph, for the majority of Season 3, Aang's character development was just set to the side for some reason, and Aang really got the short end of the stick, which undermined a lot of what the show was going for as a whole. But this isn't just a problem of Aang not learning enough from other cultures on his journey to master the elements. It's a problem of putting air nomad philosophy above every other way of thinking. I don't want to harp on this for too long, because I think I've already made a solid case for what Aang's character arc should have been, and why only single-mindedly following the culture and traditions of only one nation leaves you unbalanced, or again, as Iroh puts it so beautifully,
rigid and stale.
Thank you, Uncle. But Aang, and the show, has a tendency to really idolize the monks and air nomad philosophy. And you know, I get it. they are a peaceful, spiritual people who got majorly screwed over. Their culture and people would be completely dead if Aang hadn't run away. So, romanticizing them a bit, yeah, I totally get that. But because of this, there's almost this underlying subtext from the show and from Aang that, man, if everyone was more like the air nomads, the world wouldn't be in this mess, or would be better off. And again, this is counterproductive to the show's overall themes. As a general rule, any one nation should not be portrayed as more pure or better than any of the other nations. Now, honestly, I think there was a real lost opportunity with exploring the air nomads. Aang's just a 12-year-old kid. There's still so much that Aang could have learned about his own people, the ways that the other temples did things, traditions that he might not have known about, things like that. I also think that it would have been great to, later on in the show, have the revelation that the air nomads weren't actually all dead, but severely displaced and in hiding. I love the idea of Aang reconnecting with living airbenders. Or maybe he learns about some less than perfect things about air nomad society. Like the suspicious fact that apparently all air nomads are airbenders because they're just so naturally spiritual. Like, that's sus as hell. You can't tell me there isn't something funny going on there. But anyway you shake it, when Aang is struggling with a moral dilemma, he falls back to what the monks told him. It's a pretty reliable part of Aang's personality. Problem? What would Monk Gyatso do? And it's perfectly fine for Aang to treasure the advice that his mentor gave him, but because Aang always falls back to it, it means that Aang isn't ever using his own convictions, and isn't fighting for something that he believes in. He is fighting for the ideals of his mentor that have been passed down to him. And as a growing up story, Aang should realize that sometimes you have to find your own philosophies, your own principles, and sometimes that's not going to line up with your mentors. This is why Iroh's advice to Aang here,
perfection and power are overrated. I think you are very wise to choose happiness and love,
is not the answer to Aang's dilemma that you might think it is. While it is comforting to Aang in the moment, and was obviously the correct choice for Iroh, and probably would have even been what Monk Gyatso would have said, it's not the wisdom that Aang needs. For Aang, choosing to give up power is not hard. If he could pass off being the Avatar to anyone else, he would do it in a heartbeat. That's his character flaw. He doesn't want power, and he doesn't want to be the Avatar.
Why didn't you tell us you were the Avatar?
Because I never wanted to be.
The lessons that Iroh needed to learn to become the man he is today are not the lessons that Aang needs. And this goes for every character. Sometimes the lessons Aang has taken to heart aren't going to work well for the rest of his friends. So with that being said, I have to talk about Southern Raiders for a hot second, because I think Aang looks so bad in this episode. A quick reminder, this is the episode where Zuko and Katara go to find the man that killed Katara's mother. Aang is, to put it bluntly, very against this, and he chides Katara on even wanting to attempt it. Now, to bring back what I said about Katara's character growth, Katara being given the power and opportunity to seek reparations for herself is an important part of her character arc. It's the climax of her growth. And Aang is standing in the direct way of that. And no matter how you slice it, they don't see eye to eye by the end of the episode, but Katara comes away from it better off. She's made her own decision on how to handle this and has found some level of peace with that. But, according to Aang, the only solution Katara should have even considered was forgiveness, because that's what the monks would have said. And Aang doesn't come at this problem of Katara's grief and hurt from a place of compassion and wanting to better understand Katara. No, Aang wants Katara to understand how he feels about it, how the monks would have handled this, and how that should be good enough for her. And a lot of people sympathize with Aang in this episode, and I just don't get it. While forgiveness might work for Aang, that doesn't mean it's going to be the right thing for everyone else, let alone Katara. And even Zuko has had first-hand experience with being able to finally confront his abuser. Not because he had to, or he was even planning on doing anything to Ozai to get revenge, but confronting Ozai on the day of the Black Sun was the closure that Zuko needed to get for himself in order to leave his father behind. And Katara needed to similarly face her demons and make her own decision on what she would do. Aang's approach is not only closed-minded to Katara's need for closure, but also prioritizing air nomad teachings onto a girl who isn't an air nomad. And speaking of Katara, you might be asking,
Why would I choose cosmic energy over Katara? How could it be a bad thing that I feel an attachment to her? 3 chakras ago, that was a good thing.
Throughout Season 1 and Season 2, Aang goes into the Avatar state numerous times, and most times we see it, it's directly connected to Katara in some form or another. Whether he's worried about her safety, or, like in the desert episode, it is because she's the only one who can calm him down. Katara has become Aang's crutch, and I can't tell you how awkward it is to see this be romanticized by the show, or at least never properly addressed as the unhealthy dynamic that it is. Katara shouldn't have to be the one to manage Aang's mood swings.
Overreacting? If I hadn't blocked my chakra, I'd probably be in the Avatar state right now. It's a desert cloud. I did all I could. What's anyone else doing? What are you doing?
Aang's whole dynamic with Katara is very one-sided. Katara is his mentor. She comes to him when he's feeling down to help him talk it through. She talks to the other members of the team on Aang's behalf, while at the same time, the same cannot be said of Aang helping Katara. When Katara isn't the perfect nurturing figure, Aang either isn't involved or he doesn't understand Katara's rage at all. In short, Aang only ever interacts with an idealized version of her, and that's what he's in love with. And that love is something that he's become dependent upon.
If nothing else were around, this creek would flow pure and clear. However, life is messy, and things tend to fall in the creek. But if we open the paths between the pools,
The energy flows.
lay all your grief out in front of you. You have indeed felt a great loss. The air nomad's love for you has not left this world. It is still inside of your heart and is reborn in the form of new love. Once you open this chakra, you'll be able to go in and out of the Avatar state at will. And when you are in the Avatar state, you will have complete control and awareness of all your actions.
Let's do this.
Meditate on what attaches you to this world. Let them flow down the river, forgotten.
What?
Everyone knows that Aang needs to master the Avatar state because he's dangerous. He hurts and could kill people if he does not have control over it. Which should not only be something that Aang feels a moral responsibility to achieve, but it's something that everyone around him needs him to do as well. It's not a matter of choosing love over power. It's a matter of choosing to be able to control your very dangerous, violent outbursts that could not only harm people that you did not want to harm, but have serious consequences for the world.
Overreacting? If I hadn't blocked my chakra, I'd probably be in the Avatar state right now.
And I don't think if Katara knew the whole situation, she would find Aang's choice very romantic, especially considering how upset she is by Aang being triggered into the Avatar state against his will.
I saw you get so upset that you weren't even you anymore. I'm not saying the Avatar state doesn't have incredible and helpful power, but you have to understand, for the people who love you, Watching you be in that much rage and pain is really scary.
Aang's misunderstanding of the Guru here should be obvious. Obviously, the Guru isn't saying that you cannot love someone.
Learn to let her go, or you cannot let the pure cosmic energy flow in from the universe.
Love is an important part of Aang's journey. Realizing that just because people who have loved you are now gone, their love for you is still there. And as energy, love comes from many different sources. His crush on Katara has become a crutch, something he's dependent upon. I'm not saying that Aang should be solely self-reliant and refuse help, but time and time again the series shows us directly how Aang uses Katara's love and compassion in a way that is counterproductive to his own growth as a character. And the finale only serves to put a band-aid over this issue rather than address it. So this goes hand in hand with Aang's lack of character development in Season 3 that I was talking about earlier. But because the show dropped the blocked chakras storyline, many think that Aang made the correct choice during the Crossroads of Destiny, or that the writers intended for this to be Aang's arc since the beginning. And I disagree. I guess whether it's intentional or not, I can't really say. I will never agree with you that it was the correct choice. I think that a lot of points that I've already brought up show that why I think that if this were the case, that leaves Aang with some of the sloppiest storytelling for an otherwise great show. Obviously, I wasn't in the writing room for Avatar, I don't know the backstage secrets, but I have heard enough of the numerous rumors about the disagreements and back and forths of how exactly the writers wanted to handle Book 3 that I can't help but believe that some version of those rumors is probably true. It just makes sense that for Aang in particular, there were at least 2 different versions on where this character was going to go, and when it came time to write it, neither could agree. So Aang's drama got resolved in the most hurried way possible, ignoring the previously set up conflict in favor of giving him a new problem that could be fixed in the 4-part finale that established it. And I think that a lot of it had to do with whether or not Aang would get the girl. And I've really wanted to avoid the topic of shipping for this analysis because, trust me, as someone who has shipped Zutara since the beginning, I've had plenty of experiences where people immediately shut down my criticisms of this show and say, you're just butthurt because your ship isn't canon. Well, yes, thank you for noticing. I am butthurt. But so what? But also, that doesn't take away from my criticisms, and I honestly believe that the shipping in this show, done by the creators to fuel fan engagement, made the show worse as a whole, and may have even caused the sloppy handling of Aang in Season 3. When I say I ship Zutara, it's because I honestly think it would have made for a better show that more clearly and concisely stuck to its themes. If you want a really good analysis on this particular aspect of the show, and I mean like a top tier video essay content, please go check out Sneezy Review's analysis on Zutara and how it would have made the whole story better. That video is a masterpiece, and she puts all of these points into such clarity. It also really delves into the relationships of Katang, Maiko, and Zutara super well. Anyway, but because the creators really wanted Aang to get the girl in the end, but also wanted to keep up the fan speculation of will they, won't they, this leaves Aang at his most desperate and unappealing in Season 3. He can't grow from his mistake in Season 2 because the creators are intimidated by the idea of Aang needing to learn to let Katara go, even though I don't think that this would have had to have been the nail in the coffin for Katang. In fact, I think this would have helped Aang see Katara as more of a person and who she is with all her flaws and everything, and they could have gained a more realistic relationship with each other. You know, I don't think that Guru Patik was saying you're not allowed to love anyone ever. But Aang can't progress in his relationship with Katara in any meaningful way because we have to keep up the will they, won't they alive, which means that Katara's feelings on the matter have to stay ambiguous at best or outright discouraging so that Aang has to work to get his happy ending. It's all very soap opera. Aang's crush on Katara doesn't really connect back to the main themes of Avatar, and it really doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. But because the creators took a personal interest in Aang getting the girl because they felt bad for him and related to his nice guy problems, this is where we're at. With Aang not being allowed to grow or deepen his relationships with the other characters, and not just Katara, it feels like Aang doesn't really get to grow in a lot of his relationships with most of Team Avatar. And even by the end of the show, he is still putting Air Nomad teachings first when the world really needed him to learn balance in order to foster harmony. He's still running away from his problems and can't understand the people around him who have different codes of ethics and traditions. Even with the current solution for Aang's problems, taking Ozai's bending away, Aang is still not facing the repercussions of what that means. He gives Ozai back to the Fire Nation to deal with, and Aang gets to run away from his responsibility again, giving it to Zuko to deal with for the rest of Ozai's life. I look at Avatar and I see all this wonderful potential that was lost, and I honestly don't see Aang's ending as a happy one. Same with Toph, who never gets closure with her parents. And I see Aang's lack of closure as a tragedy. He might have fixed his problems on a surface level, the world is no longer at war, and he's learned all 4 elements, but his character development was cut short of reaching what he really needed to learn in order to be happy. While on the other hand, characters like Katara, Sokka, and Zuko do get to be explored and feel like fully realized characters in comparison. And in a shocking twist, I think that Korra actually proves my point. Aang and Toph are both deeply flawed characters in that show, and those flaws are directly related to their unresolved conflicts in Avatar. For Aang in particular, we learn that he never really stopped putting air nomads first, or to not run away from his problems. And that sucks! I honestly don't think it adds anything meaningful to Korra other than to point out this flaw in Aang's writing. Because acknowledging that Aang never grew as a person because you kneecapped his storyline isn't the same as planning for that to be his character arc since the beginning. This isn't really about Korra though, so this is where I'll end things off. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I would have loved to see Aang truly get the happy ending he deserved. Until next time, stay inspired. Alright. Thank you all so much for watching this video. This was several months in the making, and I am so proud of how it turned out. I really put my heart and soul into this video, and I realized that this will probably attract some people who aren't normally viewers of my channel. So hi, hello, thank you for watching this video. This is kind of content that I want to be making more of in the future. I've got several other videos similar to this one planned, and if you would like more Avatar related videos, be sure to let me know because I love talking about Avatar. Also, if you're new here, hi, I'm Tennelle. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns, so I'll know if you watched the whole video or not, based on how you address me, I guess. And, yeah, thank you so much. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say, and have a good one. Next Drawing a Blank should be on the next Zodiac animal drawing, so that'll be fun. And I should also have more Clouded Moon Drawing a Blanks done soon after that. We'll see. I have another video I want to get done for Pride Month, so fingers crossed for that. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day.